In the wake of the news that the UFC would be making a gargantuan number of cuts to their roster, naturally the MMA community immediately began to speculate as to who these 60 fighters could be. Now, I recently gave my thoughts on this decision from the UFC, outlining what exactly their selection criteria might be, so be sure to check that video out once you're finished with this one. But all in all, I was pretty surprised to see that Yoel Romero would be the first to receive his marching orders from Dana White. I mean, it's not the most shocking cut one could ever imagine seeing, but I suppose for me, it has a certain level of significance because Romero is without a doubt one of my favourite fighters of all time. Indeed, he did bottle it in his most recent outing, falling into a stalemate with the middleweight king Israel Adesanya, but this whole narrative that Yoel is a boring fighter is absolutely ludicrous. I don't know how prevalent it is, but I've seen it out there enough to want to make a comment on it. For my money, this is one of the most electric and captivating fighters of this era, an athlete whose fighting style is something more akin to a jack-in-the-box than anything else. During that run that began with his hugely controversial knockout of Tim Kennedy and ended with his title eliminator matchup with Paulo Costa, the Jacare fight aside, Romero for me was pretty unmissable in there. That 5-3 run might not sound like much, but in all honesty, I scored both the Costa fight and the second Whittaker fight for Yoel. In my eyes, he's on a level playing field at 1-1 with Whittaker and only truly lost within the octagon against Adesanya, in a fight he just didn't show up for. That might sound like a bit of a leap, and believe me, I realize that there will be some of you that label me as a Yoel fanboy or whatever term it is that you deem fitting. But at the very least, you have to admit that Romero was never conclusively beaten since joining the UFC. If I may call this video to a halt for a moment, to anyone who's been watching our content over the last few weeks, you'll know the drill, but we're really trying to up our game here at MMA Dive in order to bring you even more content every week. So if you're really enjoying what we're doing so far, be sure to leave a comment and a like to let YouTube's algorithms know that we're fast becoming one of the best MMA channels on the platform. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so now to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Okay, back to the video. There have been razor-thin decisions that have clearly been swayed by his odd and often difficult to quantify fighting style, but all in all, I believe that there's a very strong argument to be made that Romero's record is a lot better than the numbers would suggest. But that's not why I love him as a fighter. This guy is a 1 in a billion athlete, a man so defined by his physical capabilities that he was able to construct a fighting style that was tailor-made for his body type and overall attributes. For over 2 decades now, he has been competing at the highest levels of combat sports, excelling with dual successes in the worlds of freestyle wrestling and mixed martial arts. Now, at 43, he might be fresh off of a rather underwhelming display in the biggest fight of his life, but as far as very clear signs of decline are concerned, we perhaps haven't seen enough to prove anything. He should be slowing down. He should be reaching a point that sees his fighting spirit dwindle to some extent. But alas, I cannot say for certain how Yoel Romero will look in his next outing. His chin is certainly still there, and as far as I can tell, the explosive energy that defines his style has not yet deteriorated. As much as his age could well be something that is off-putting to any potential suitors as far as new promotional homes are concerned, a part of me would not be surprised to see Romero maintain a high level of performance well into his 40s. We've seen it before with fighters who entered the sport late, most notably Randy Couture. And while Romero's style is a lot more dependent on speed and overall reflexes than Captain America's, I have never once seen Randy Couture do a backflip. Romero's ceiling, in terms of athleticism, is set so high that even a partial drop-off would still leave him as a freakishly mobile customer. What was truly interesting about Yoel's run was his refinement of his approach in there. I spoke about the jack-in-the-box style, but I feel as though it's Romero's killer instinct that defines what it is that he does inside the octagon. Bear with me on this one, but I've always drawn a soft parallel between Yoel Romero and Brian Ortega during his initial climb through the featherweight ranks. There's just something to these two fighters that I can only really describe as an almighty X-factor. A killer instinct, a magnetic attraction towards the finish. They both come for different reasons. Ortega's from his masterful BJJ and creative striking, Romero's from the athleticism we've already covered. But these two guys hold some seriously weird stats for late finishes. In 4 straight fights during his original ascent at 145 pounds, Ortega managed to find the finish in the 3rd round 4 times in a row. These were mainly in fights that he was losing. But those who knew what they were watching were not counting him out. That is a record that may never be broken. As far as Romero is concerned, his 9-4 UFC record contained within it 7 wins by way of finish. Aside from his debut flying knee knockout of Clifford Starks, all of Yoel's finishes have come by way of 3rd round knockout. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a remarkable statistic that paints a more vivid picture than I ever could of this man's talents. He sits in there, often losing most of the exchanges, being outvolumed, watching as the scorecards begin to turn on him. And then he finds his way to win, leaving it to the fight's dying embers to make the bout's defining move. That takes a ridiculous level of confidence in your abilities. It takes an incredible appreciation for the art of making reads, and given how brutal these victories often are, it takes a level of temperament and calm in there that is just not often found in this sport. The results speak for themselves. So yeah, I'm very sad to see Romero departing. I think that there's more than enough evidence to suggest that he has plenty more to give, and as I said before, a few very close and sometimes controversial scorecards in many ways deprived him of a record that I believe to be more fitting of the work that he's done over the years. So wherever he ends up next, I will certainly be tuning in, because even in his oddest and most seemingly docile of moments, this man can flip the switch in an instant, and when he does, you'd better get out of the way. What's your take on the UFC career of the Soldier of God? And perhaps more importantly, where do you think he's going to end up, now that his time in the world's top mixed martial arts promotion is at its end? Be sure to let us know in the comment section below, we really do love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to leave a like on this video before subscribing to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. And as always, thank you for watching.